Good lord, is it December already? How did that happen?
I can explain that. Well, time makes fools of us all.
I'd hoped to get my third video essay out by now, but it turns out that writing essays around a full-time job, 2 podcasts, and a social life takes longer than you would expect. But I wanted to make sure I had something to round out the year. Something to celebrate what an unusual year it's been for gaming, both in good and bad ways. But how do you talk about a year in gaming? Do I talk about my games of the year? Maybe, but everyone does that. Do I recount the year month by month? Nah, it seems trite and long-winded. What I want to do is talk about some games I love, but mostly the games that really surprised me. Like I say, 2024 has been a really weird year. There's been some amazing games released this year, but also some high-profile flops. Notably, Sony released Concord to absolutely no fanfare, before summarily killing it within a fortnight and shutting down Firewall Studios. Ubisoft absolutely shit the bed this year, with Star Wars Outlaws, Skull and Bones and Prince of Persia all underperforming. This week as I'm recording this, they also announced the shutdown of their live service game X-Defiant, and there's rumours that the shareholders want Tencent to buy the company out. Square Enix's live shooter Foam Stars was also released and the crowd went mild. That one's getting shut down too. In fact, with the notable exception of Helldivers 2, it's been an absolutely terrible year for new live service games. Which is fine by me, I much prefer my single player experiences, but I do feel for the developers who work for years to make these games, only for the publisher to screw their efforts over with idiotic business decisions. Concord releasing at £35? When Overwatch 2 and Valorant are free? That was an absolutely boneheaded decision from Sony. The proof in the pudding is Marvel Rivals, which released this month. It's a free-to-play team hero shooter, and the Steam player count confirms what a stupid decision it was to make Concord a paid game. But I'm not here to grouse or revel in the failures of other games. No, I'm here to celebrate some games that really surprised me this year. So let's get to it. This isn't a countdown or a top 5, these are just some games you should all play. Capcom haven't spent a lot of time making role-playing games recently. It makes sense. Their tentpole franchises like Resident Evil, Street Fighter and Monster Hunter bring in more money than a small South American country, but it's made the company reasonably risk-averse in the last decade or so. So imagine my surprise when in a PlayStation showcase last year, it was revealed that Hideaki Itsuno was working on a sequel to his seminal 2012 role-playing opus, Dragon's Dogma. The original game was excellent, but it did have a few issues. Mostly it had a really poor opening and player onboarding experience, which put off a lot of players, and that was also mixed with an open world that struggled to deliver on the lofty promises Itsuno made at the original reveal. There was also some issue with performance on the consoles. It kinda ran poorly. The sequel fixes nearly all of the issues that the players had with the original game. The tale of this new Arisen takes place in a vast, contiguous open world teeming with life, monsters and secrets to find. And it's all presented without loading screens. The combat is fun and frenetic, it's easy to pick up and easy to put down again. The ability to grip on and climb huge monsters sets the combat system apart from other fantasy RPGs, and the new skill systems allow you to customise your build however you like it in far greater capacity than in the original game. It's also fucking gorgeous. I don't know what witchcraft Capcom have imbued into the RE engine or how many goats they had to sacrifice, but will you just look at it? The only thing that marred my experience of the game was the performance on console. On my PS5, the frame rate chugged like crazy. In the larger town, the frame rate of the game frequently dropped down into the 20s. Playing it on PC is absolutely the way to go if you can. At 60 frames a second, Dragon's Dogma 2 absolutely soars. It's a beautiful game presented at its best, with one of the best open worlds I've played in a very long time. It's absolutely worth your time to find.
Tiny Tums, Tiny Pies. You simply won't get tinier.
England isn't often well presented in video games. Whether it's The Getaway with its Guy Ritchie-style Cockney gangsters, or Everybody's Gone to the Rapture's take on 1980s rural Suffolk, most representations of England miss the mark, or fall into twee stereotypes. Coal Supper, developers of Thank Goodness You're Here, understand England. Mostly though, they understand Northern England. They understand the weird, surreal places that rural towns in Yorkshire and above can be. Thank Goodness You're Here is a surrealist comedy adventure game where you play a travelling salesman who is dispatched to the fictional town of Barnsworth to sell whatever it is he sells, but he ends up just running around the town doing things for the townsfolk. Whether it's dislodging a person stuck in a sewer grate with buttery nubs, to punching a lost spanner out of a fish to help the handyman fix the chip shop. This game is full of absolutely unhinged and bizarre moments that feel quintessentially British at their core. It's so British they even managed to get Matt Berry to voice some of the characters.
Oh, thank goodness you're here. I've been sucking this pipe all morning. I haven't got a drop out of it. Little Tomantha here's nearly crusted over. We need to dampen that topsoil pronto.
As a man who grew up in strange northern towns, the humour hits so perfectly for me. Everything is right, all the weirdness, all the strange things that you find at market stalls, the small shops, the way the local supermarket is represented, everything is just so pitch perfect and elevated to that next level. It's a 3-hour long little game that had me in stitches throughout. Comedy is so hard to do in games, but somehow Cole Supper managed to thread the needle and create one of the funniest games I've ever played. And to prove my point, this is the line of dialogue that nearly killed me. Don't be drinking when you play this game, it's dangerous. You might choke.
I'll have a chicken bake, please, love.
Well, with no butter today, Colin's gone and lost it, so it's vegan. I hope that's alright.
Oh no, I'd rather shit bed.
I'll put it out here now, I was very excited for Stalker 2. I enjoyed the original trilogy of games the GSC Gameworks had released between 2007 and 2009. I'd been champing at the bit for the sequel ever since it was first announced in 2010, before GSC collapsed and then was resurrected, resumed work on the game, and then had to deal with the horrific Russian invasion of Ukraine and their subsequent relocation to Prague from Kyiv. To say Stalker 2 is an unlikely release is an understatement. There's no reason in the world that this game should have ever come out, but here we are and it's fucking marvellous. Our return back to the Chernobyl exclusion zone has our protagonist Skiff balancing different factions, mutants, random murderous stalkers, the military, and the anomalies of the zone itself as we try to find who screwed us over and left us for dead at the start of the game. The greatest achievement this game has is that it feels like a Stalker game. It would have been really easy for GSC to make a game that panders to modern sensibilities and make a simpler game that holds your hand. But the devs have been resolute in their desire to stay true to the heart of the franchise. Stalker 2 is every bit the hardcore survival game that the original games were. Running headfirst into combat is a surefire way to get yourself killed. If you don't look after your weapons, they'll get less accurate over time, or they might even jam during a firefight. Mutants will cut you and make you bleed, and if you take too much radiation damage, you'll die before you can make it to the next town. Stalker 2 demands you meet it on its terms. If you try and play it like a Call of Duty or a Fallout, you're not going to get very far at all. Then there's the zone itself, a completely open 64 square mile map with no limits or guardrails. You can go anywhere you want as soon as you want, but you'll only survive if you're equipped properly. Sure, it's got bugs and the performance wasn't great on launch, but it's a marvellous experience. It's one of those games I can't help but think about when I'm not playing it. I just want to go and explore the zone as much as I can. It's also on Game Pass if you have it, so it's absolutely worth your time to try it, whether it's on Xbox or PC, although I'd recommend playing it on PC because, as you can see from the footage here, it's absolutely bloody beautiful. This is Unreal 5 working marvellously. Please play Stalker 2, and if you can't buy it, support the devs. Their effort deserves your time and money. I hate poker. I'm terrible at it. I have the worst poker face in the world. Honestly, you can see me trying to lie a mile away. Yet, Balatro has absolutely consumed my year. At the time of writing, I've sunk over 130 hours into it. It's just that addictive. The premise is simple. You build your deck and try to beat an ever-expanding score by playing poker hands. The complexity and depth comes from the way jokers are built into the game. Your jokers are there for you to break poker. You build up the amount of chips per hand, then apply multipliers to try and push your score as high as possible. And such is the addictive loop of the game. It's always just one more hand, one more boss fight, one more card pack. Balatro is a dopamine machine. The hypnotic background, the relaxing looping lo-fi soundtrack, the way the cards click and tap as they move around on the table, it just tickles some part of my brain that brings me back to it over and over again. The escalating challenge of the different coloured stakes on the modified decks gives you a difficulty curve that's infuriatingly compelling. Again and again, I just pick up my Steam Deck and lose hours to this maddening drug of a game. It's utterly phenomenal, and now that it's on phones, it's dangerous being on phones. My productivity has gone through the floor. Finally, I want to talk about Nine Sols. This game came out of nowhere for me. I actually discovered it through one of Iron Pineapple's Steam dumpster diving videos, if you can believe it. Nine Sols is a Metroidvania made by Taiwanese developer Red Candle Games, and it plays around with the traditional combat looms that most games in the genre rely on these days. Most Metroidvanias released in the last decade or two take their inspiration either from the classic Metroid games or from the Souls series, but Nine Sols cribs from Sekiro Shadows Die Twice instead. You play as Yi, one of the titular Solarians, who was betrayed by his Knight colleagues and left for dead. On your quest for revenge, you'll explore a vast interconnected map, fighting mutated aberrations, berserk robots, and the increasingly unhinged main bosses. The combat loop is all defense-based, so unlike most Metroidvanias, you won't be fighting front-on, you'll be parrying attacks and fighting strategically. Nine Sols is a game that forces you to learn every boss in intimate detail. When you combine the technical combat with the hand-drawn graphics and the utterly heartbreaking and brilliantly written story, you get what can only be described as my game of the year. I adore Nine Sols. I adored every second of my 30 hours with the game. I absolutely cannot believe that people are sleeping on it, because I genuinely believe it's one of the best games released in years. I love this game so much it's the subject of my third essay, so my next video will be a really detailed deep dive on the game. There's just so much to write about with it, it's just taken a while to finish the script. And so there we go, some games I've played this year that are going to stick with me for a long time. And those are just the 5 that stuck out the most to me. There's been some absolutely cracking games released this year that I've barely touched or not even picked up at all. Black Myth Wukong, Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers, Locomotion, Metaphor ReFantasio and Indiana Jones all deserve to be played and talked about at length. But these are the games that have stuck with me, so let me know what your big gaming standouts were this year. What did you enjoy? What caught you by surprise? What are you hoping to win the Game Awards? Thank you for watching my videos this year. My first 2 essays did far more than I expected, and I really appreciate all the positive feedback and support that you've given me this year. If you're not already following me there, head over to my free Patreon, where I'm occasionally posting updates on what I'm doing with this channel. The link is in the description, it doesn't cost you a penny. I'm also on Blue Sky. Check me out there. Anyway, have a wonderful festive period, and I'll see you in the new year with my essay on Nine Sols. See you on the next one.